So the question is, even if you can deal with all these other complicated issues, how can you divide Jerusalem? It's a really good question. You have to understand, first of all, why Jerusalem is so important, and I think we probably have some sense of that. But I mean, for the Jewish people, this is this is David's kingdom, and this is the very beginnings of the great period of Jewish and Hebrew civilization is really King David and King Solomon and the early kingdom, which was centered in Jerusalem. All right. So for the Jewish people, there's this long historic connection through that's both religious and nationalistic. All right. For the Palestinians, though, Jerusalem is also very resonant. All right. So there have been Palestinian connections to Jerusalem for many centuries too, both Muslim and Christian. All right. And so both sides are claiming deep connections to this same city. All right. Now, it's really hard. How do you solve that? How do you deal with both sides claiming the same city as both a national capital and with religious connections? Not easy stuff. If you look at Jerusalem today, though, it's actually a very divided city. All right, there are Arab neighborhoods and there are Jewish neighborhoods, and there is almost no place in Jerusalem in which Arabs and Jews live in the same neighborhoods. All right, that's very much. It's a very unusual thing to have Arabs and Jews living together. So there's already deep division within Jerusalem. It's a very self-segregated city. Right? About 30% of the population is Palestinian or Arab, and the other 70% is Jewish. It's actually more than 30%, and more like 65-35 now, I think, is probably the more accurate number. But it's very divided already. And so what they've done in the past in terms of trying to negotiate political arrangements is to basically say that the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem would remain under Palestinian control in a new Palestinian state, and the Jewish neighborhoods would remain under Israeli control in a new in a peace agreement. So that's one way to think about how you do the political division. So then, what does it really look like? Are there hard borders, or is there some kind of softer arrangement where you don't have actual walls and dividers and that sort of thing? And that's a really difficult question to answer, and there are different ways to think about that too. But one of the harder questions is, how do you deal with the sacred space? How do you deal with the fact that the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, is the holiest site in Judaism, and it is a retaining wall of the of King Herod's temple or Solomon's temple, and above it is the area where the temple stood, the Temple Mount, which has the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam, and these are very connected. And there are other examples of that in this area of the old city of Jerusalem and what we would call the Holy Basin, where there are things that aren't neatly divided or arranged. There have been folks that have studied this for a number of years now, 10 or 12 years. There have been studies that have been done ever since there was an attempt to really create Jerusalem as two capitals for two people in the Camp David peace agreement back in the year 2000 that President Clinton led. There have been folks that have really focused in on how can we either share or divide Jerusalem, how can we account for the sacred connections of three faith communities and respect those and ensure that people have access to their holy sites, to places that are important to them for religious reasons. There are choices out there. I'm not saying any of them are easy, but there are ways to think about that in the larger context of some kind of agreement. To me, the central thing that you have to do to secure Jerusalem's future and to find a way for people there to live together is to make sure that you recognize that both national communities think of Jerusalem as the center of their lives, that both national groups want it as their capital, at least some part of it, and that all three faith communities have deep connections to it. All right, that Jews, Christians, and Muslims all have deep connections to Jerusalem. And if you can honor that in some way and not having one national group or one religious group be supreme over the others, but have all of them have equal access to things that are important to them, there are ways to solve it. If you can't do that, then you're actually going to continue to have conflict in Jerusalem.